As you know, the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute was established on the 6th of July 1917. Mahamopadhyay P V Kane was one of the worthy founder members of the institute. I am here to tell you about Mahamopadhyay Kane and the institute. Kane was born on the 7th of May 1880 at a village named Pedhe, that is Parshuram, near Chipurn. His father was a priest, but later on turned to the profession of an advocate. And Kane also wanted to do the same. He had his education in quite difficult situations because during his childhood, bubonic plague was a major epidemic that used to visit the country very often. So, passing through these calamities, Kane received his education and secured good numbers and very high ranks in his school as well as college. He became a school teacher, but very soon passed law examinations and entered into the profession of an advocate. And his ambition to become a high court pleader also came true. While he was working as an advocate, he continued with his studies and brought out a number of Sanskrit works and textbooks. His work in Dharmasastra is profound, but equally notable is his work on Sanskrit poetics and Sanskrit literature in general. The Bhandarkar Institute was to be established and a committee was formed in 1915, and Kane was a member of that committee. Kane was one of those 30 members who donated 500 rupees each for purchasing the land for the institute. He became a life member in 1916-17 and continued to be a member of the working committee till 1918 and of the regulating council till his death, that is in 1972. Kane was awarded the honorary membership of the institute in its silver jubilee year, that is 1943. Now his relation with the institute, the academic relation, it began with his work Vyavahara Mayukha of Bhatta Neelakantha. For the Bombay Sanskrit and Prakrit series, which was transferred to the institute by the British government, he edited this Vyavahara Mayukha and it was published in 1926. In the preface to that edition, he very briefly said that this is not the end, he is rather induced to write a history of the Dharmasastra. And that is how it began. Mind you, when he stated that he wished to write the history of Dharmasastra, he was already 46. And he was also troubled by peptic ulcer, which he carried through his life of 92 years. Now Kane brought out his first volume of the history of Dharmasastra in 1930. And then that had the concept of Dharma, the sources of Dharma, detailed description of the Dharma Sutras, Arthashastra of Kautilya, the various Smritis, epics, Puranas, Nibandhas and commentaries. So a complete overview of the Dharmashastric literature had been taken by Kane in the first volume itself. He wanted to complete the work in 2 volumes, but it was not going to happen so. After 11 years, that is in 1941, he brought out his second volume in 2 parts, and that had the Varna, the Ashramas, the Sanskaras, the day-to-day rituals, charity, and sacrificial rituals. Now, in 5 years, he brought out the third volume, which was published in 1946, and it had very important chapters like Rajadharma, Vyavahara, Sadachara, and Kalivarjyas, those things that are to be avoided during the Kali age. Very interestingly, he produced a list of high offices in ancient and medieval India, which he had taken from the numerous inscriptions that he had read. Kane's contribution to this third volume was not merely academic. He had advanced a sum of rupees 3,000 to the institute in order to enable it to purchase paper and print the volume, because the funds of the institute during that time were very meager because of the situation of the Second World War. Now, when this work was going on, Kane was not free from his usual duties. He was a High Court advocate. He had a lot many cases to deal with, and he was also busy with his social service. He was a member and office bearer of many bodies in Mumbai, Pune and elsewhere, and he used to fight cases also for the benefit of the society. For instance, in a case that he fought for a widow from Bhandarkar, he brought her the justice that she could touch the feet of Lord Vithoba, in spite of the fact that she was not tonsured, and that was a major victory. In 1927, when the Mela, that is a body of artists of the scheduled caste, so to say, they applied to the Brahman Sabha, of which Kane was the chairman, that they be allowed to have darshan of the Ganesha of Brahman Sabha. Kane called a meeting of the executive council, and the executive council was divided equally, but Kane gave his casting vote to the effect that the people who asked for the darshan of the Ganapati should be given that darshan. The other party went to the court, but the court decided in favor of this reform that Kane wanted to do. Mind you, this was in 1927, when the temples of India were not all open for the downtrodden people. Now, Kane was busy with these things, and he was also writing the history of Dharmasastra. In 1947, he was appointed the Vice Chancellor of the University of Mumbai, and he worked there almost in an honorary capacity for 2 years. And the then Chief Minister of the Bombay Presidency, B.G. Kher, he requested Kane to continue and had offered him a handsome salary of 2,000 rupees a month at that time. But Kane refused to continue for the sake of the history of Dharmasastra. And he kept on writing the history of Dharmasastra, and in 1953 he brought out his fourth volume, which included Patakas, Prayashchittas, then Antyeshti, that is funeral or cremation, and subjects like Ashaucha, that is Sutak, etc., Shuddhi, Shraddha, and most importantly, pilgrimage, Tirtha Yatra, and he gave an exhaustive list of the Tirthas of India, which is not only important for the religious study, but it's also important for the geographical study of India. In the meantime, he was appointed as a president's nominee on the Rajya Sabha, and he worked there for 5 years. He was a member of many important committees, including the Committee on Hindu Law, which was passed by the Parliament in 1956. Now, in 1958, Kane was appointed as the National Professor of Indology with an expectation that he should continue his research. Now, why this expectation? Remember, in 1958, Kane was already 78 years old, and the government wanted that he should work further, and he did that. The first part of his fifth volume was published in 1958, and the second part was published in 1962, and it included vratas, that is vows, utsavas, that is festivals, then a long chapter on Kala, the concept of time in ancient India, then Shantis, then rebirth, Punarjanma, and relation of the Dharmasastra with various subjects. He also brought out chapters on fundamental character of the Hindu culture and also wrote about the future trends. The completion of the History of Dharmasastra was announced by Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, the then President of India, on 17th of November 1962. Now, Kane has also given an epilogue to his fifth volume, in which, on requests of his friends and admirers, he has given the account of his life and particularly the account of the history of Dharmasastra. He is very outspoken, and he has every right to be so. He has narrated his methodology. He says that he has about 100 notebooks of foolscap size in which he has put notes, and he also maintains a ledger of subjects which has pages divided in A, B, C till Z, in which there is a sort of index of these subjects. And then from the ledger and from his notebooks, he produces his texts. He says that he doesn't know typewriting, and that's why he wrote each and every word himself, and in some cases has got it typewritten from a person named R.G. Barve, who was his neighbor. Then he used to send this typewritten script to Pune, to Bhandarkar Institute for typesetting, and then he used to read at least 3 proofs of that matter, and the 4th proof was given to some Sanskrit scholar in Pune who used to take care of the diacritical marking and such other small matters. And then that proof used to be sent to Kane, and he used to incorporate these corrections in his proof. So, writing the whole matter, getting it typewritten, reading at least 3 proofs, and then finalization, and sending the whole matter to Pune by post every time. So, all this was done by Kane at his own expenses. And what did Kane do? What did Kane receive in lieu of that? He received something like 18,802 rupees, and the total expenditure of the history of Dharmasastra he has given was 58,341 rupees and 13 annas. 58,341 rupees and 13 annas. So, putting together his honorarium, the total expenses would be 77,000 143 rupees and 13 annas, and he also mentions that the institute has something like 3,900 books which are yet to be bound, and they will cost something like 7,800 rupees, and the total expenditure of the whole mass of History of Dharmasastra divided in 5 volumes and running over 6,500 pages is about 84,943 rupees and 13 annas. So he was even very meticulous and particular about accounting for what he did. He says that he has received 3 rupees each for the pages of the first volume, the second volume, and the fourth volume. For the third volume, obviously, because it was a war time, he was paid rupees 2 and not 3. And maybe as a compensation, for the fifth volume, he is likely to be paid rupees 4 per page printed. Now friends, these 5 volumes of the History of Dharmasastra, covering such a mass of history, so many topics, and running through almost 6,500 pages, have a bibliography of 176 pages, and the indexes of the 5 volumes, which were made by Kane himself, they run through something like 350 pages. So we rather do not even read these many pages these days, but he has written these many pages. And if you take what R.N. Dandekar, the then Honorary Secretary of the Institute, had written about Kane in his obituary notice, Kane had a contribution, literary contribution, which was about 2.5 times larger than his History of Dharmasastra. And Dandekar has enumerated the contribution of Kane. So Kane had, to his credit, at least 15,000 printed pages. And this is actually other than his work as the advocate at the Bombay High Court and elsewhere. So that's what Kane was. He was firm, he was a strong protagonist of Hindu law. He firmly believed that the Veda was anitya, mind you, anitya, unlike the tradition. He believed that Tarka must govern the interpretation of Dharma, and that the Hindu law has changed and must change even in future. Kane received a number of recognitions, but the most important and the highest recognition was the announcement of Bharat Ratna in 1963. Now Bharat Ratna has been awarded to many distinguished personalities, but Kane is the only person to whom Bharat Ratna is given for academic work and the work of writing a book. So he was a distinguished person, and the government of India has recently brought out a postal stamp in the memory of Kane. All the other Bharat Ratnas had their postal stamps, but it was only Kane that was remaining, and the government of India has fulfilled this shortcoming in the recent past. That is our tribute to the memory of this great man. Thank you.